In the shifting sands of African politics, a bold and uncompromising figure has emerged from the heart of West Africa. His name is Ibrahim Traoré, a young army captain turned head of state who has become the symbol of a new era of African resistance. At just 34 years old, Traoré has stood up to one of the most powerful and historically entrenched forces on the African continent, France. Once the colonizer of Burkina Faso, France had maintained strong military, political, and economic influence over the country for more than 60 years after independence. But Traoré's actions, speeches, and policies in recent years have declared one clear message: the era of French domination in Africa is over. Traoré is not simply leading a government, he is leading a revolution of consciousness, a radical shift in how African nations view themselves and their place in the global power structure. To truly understand the significance of Ibrahim Traoré's defiance, we must look back at the colonial legacy that still haunts Africa today. Burkina Faso, formerly known as Upper Volta, was one of the many African territories under brutal French colonial rule until it gained formal independence in 1960. However, that independence was largely symbolic. France retained significant control through military presence, economic dependence, and the CFA franc, a colonial-era currency still used by 14 African countries today, effectively tying their economies to the French treasury. Through this mechanism and other post-colonial structures, France continued to benefit from Africa's natural resources, gold, uranium, oil, while offering very little in return to the African people. French companies profited, French troops stayed, and French diplomacy operated in the background, shaping policies and elections in many West African states. When Traoré led a military coup in September 2022, ousting interim leader Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, many around the world saw it as just another episode in a region known for coups and instability. But this was different. Traoré did not rise with the support of foreign governments, multinational corporations, or old political elites. He rose from the ranks of the Burkina Faso military, frustrated by the ongoing violence and insecurity caused by jihadist groups that had taken control of large parts of the country. Traoré claimed that the previous leadership had failed to protect the people and that the state was crumbling from within. The population, particularly the youth, was quick to rally behind him. They saw him as a man of action, a break from decades of weak leadership and foreign dependency. From the beginning of his rule, Ibrahim Traoré made it clear that Burkina Faso would no longer be a puppet of France. He accused France of using the fight against terrorism as a cover to maintain control and extract resources. He also pointed out that despite years of French military presence in the region, terrorism had only spread further. In 2023, Traoré made a bold and unprecedented move. He formally ordered French troops to leave Burkina Faso. This act alone was a seismic shift in West Africa. It was not just a military decision, it was a direct challenge to the geopolitical status quo. The French were forced to withdraw from military bases they had occupied for years. French flags were taken down, French institutions were scrutinized, and Traoré began promoting policies that emphasized national pride, self-reliance, and Pan-African unity. But Traoré did not stop at expelling French forces. He began to question the very systems that had been put in place to keep Africa under control. He spoke against the CFA franc and advocated for regional cooperation that would remove French economic control over West African countries. He also began to strengthen ties with non-Western powers, particularly Russia. This was not just a rejection of France. It was a rejection of the entire Western-dominated world order that has treated Africa as a subordinate continent. Burkina Faso, under Traoré, has started receiving military support and intelligence cooperation from Russia, similar to neighboring Mali and Niger, which also experienced coups and turned against France. The West, especially the European Union and the United States, reacted with concern, accusing Traoré of turning toward authoritarianism and aligning with powers that disregard human rights. But in much of Africa, these accusations are seen as hypocritical. After all, the West had supported corrupt African regimes for decades, as long as they remained loyal to foreign interests. Perhaps the most powerful aspect of Ibrahim Traoré's leadership is his rhetoric. His speeches resonate deeply with ordinary citizens, especially young Africans, because he speaks the language of freedom, dignity, and justice. He challenges the narrative that Africa must be dependent on aid or that it is too unstable to govern itself. He speaks of a sovereign Africa, free from external control, where natural resources benefit the people and where the future is decided not in Paris, Washington, or Brussels, but in Ouagadougou, Bamako, and Niamey. His popularity has skyrocketed not only within Burkina Faso, but across borders. Videos of his speeches are widely shared online. His face appears on murals, protest signs, and social media posts. In the minds of many, Traoré has picked up the mantle of Thomas Sankara, the legendary Burkinabe revolutionary leader who was assassinated in 1987 after opposing Western domination and calling for African self-reliance. However, the road ahead for Traoré and Burkina Faso is not without danger. The security situation remains precarious. Large areas of the country are still under the control of jihadist groups, and civilians continue to suffer from attacks and displacement. The economy is fragile, worsened by sanctions and the loss of foreign aid due to the government's anti-Western stance. There are also legitimate concerns about the military's long-term role in governance. Will Traoré truly organize democratic elections and hand power back to a civilian government? Or will he, like so many before him, fall into the trap of authoritarianism and indefinite rule? These questions remain unanswered, and critics are right to point out that popular support can vanish quickly if promises go unfulfilled. Still, it is impossible to ignore the fact that Traoré's leadership has ignited a continental movement. Across West Africa, countries are questioning their ties to France. In Mali and Niger, French troops have also been expelled. In Senegal, protests have erupted against economic policies seen as neocolonial. In Chad, Cameroon, and the Central African Republic, the youth are increasingly politicized, calling for sovereignty and justice. Traoré may not be leading all of these movements directly, but his actions have provided a template. He has shown that it is possible to say no to powerful former colonizers. He has proven that African countries can make their own choices, even if those choices are risky or unpopular in Western capitals. What we are witnessing today is perhaps the beginning of a Pan-African awakening. It is not just about removing foreign troops or changing currencies. It is about a psychological transformation, a breaking of chains that were once invisible but deeply embedded in the African mind. Ibrahim Traoré, in many ways, represents this transformation. He is part soldier, part revolutionary, part philosopher. He is not perfect, and his government will likely face many trials. But whether he succeeds or fails, his influence is already being written into the pages of African history. The story of Ibrahim Traoré versus France is not just a story of one man versus one country. It is the story of a continent trying to reclaim its soul. It is the story of young people rising against the systems that have kept them poor and powerless. It is the story of Africa in the 21st century, finally beginning to define itself on its own terms. And no matter what the future holds, it is clear that the spirit of resistance, once silenced by colonizers and dictators, is now alive and spreading like wildfire across the continent. But Traoré's story is also a warning. It shows us how quickly ideals can be challenged by pressure, both from within and from abroad. The road ahead is full of uncertainty. His actions have earned admiration, but also scrutiny. His leadership has given hope, but also raised tough questions about democracy, freedom, and long-term stability. Still, one cannot deny the truth at the center of all of this. Africa is standing up. And whether the world likes it or not, the next generation of African leaders will no longer ask permission to protect their sovereignty. They will demand it. We are living through a moment of historic transformation. What we're witnessing in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, and beyond is not just a rejection of France or Western powers. It's the awakening of a people who have realized that real independence is not given, it is taken. And through the story of Ibrahim Traoré, we're reminded that one person, when driven by conviction and supported by the people, can shake empires and inspire revolutions. If this story moved you, if it challenged your perspective or taught you something new, we ask you to stand with us in spreading this message. Please take a moment to like this video, as it helps more people discover content like this. Share it with others, your friends, your communities, your social media, so that these important conversations reach beyond borders. And if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel for more deep, meaningful content about global resistance, power struggles, and the voices reshaping our world. We'll continue to bring you the stories that matter, even when they're inconvenient, uncomfortable, or buried beneath the headlines. Thank you for watching. Thank you for thinking critically. And until next time, stay informed, stay aware, and never stop questioning the narratives we've been told.